Now, the Prime Minister says Lee Anderson's comments about Sadiq Khan were wrong, but repeatedly refused to answer whether he thought they were Islamophobic or not. Ali, I'm going to come to you first, because I know you've been doing lots of interviews on this all day. Do you genuinely believe that Lee Anderson's comments about Sadiq Khan were Islamophobic or just part of the political repartee?
No, I do think it was Islamophobic. And I think, actually, Lee Anderson represents, not just in his Islamophobic comments, but his entire political career in Westminster, as far as I've seen, the very worst of MPs, and represents what I think is a clown car of bottom-barrel politicians who do this bravado of saying what everyone is thinking, and I hear it down the pub, which I think is offensive to the British people. And his comments around Muslims and Islamists and Sadiq Khan were just atrocious, offensive, Islamophobic, racist, and most importantly, they make people like me less safe. Because it's because of comments like this, in the context of 335% rise in Islamophobia, that people like me get death threats, we get hate crime, Muslim women get hijabs pulled off their heads in train stations, and we've had people killed on our streets as a result of it. And I think that the entire Conservative Party, the Prime Minister, needs to really reflect on how Lee Anderson has represented the party.
Well, he's chucked him out. What more could he do?
Well, first of all, he could use the word Islamophobia. I think that's atrocious. The Prime Minister's been asked today about the comments, and he refuses to use the word Islamophobia under some, I don't know, they haven't even accepted the Islamophobia definition that the APPG has worked on, that most political parties have agreed on, the Muslim community is broadly behind as well. So he could start by admitting that the Conservative Party has a problem with Islamophobia. And, you could say Ali Milani, as chair of Labour Muslim Network, is saying it, but it's not just me. Saida Warsi, who is a Conservative Party chairwoman, has said it. Sajid Javid said it during the leadership election. I remember watching it in one of the hustings. He was saying, we've all got a problem, surely we're going to deal with it. And nothing has been done. So this is really, really a stain on the Conservative Party, on Rishi Sunak's leadership, and he needs to get a handle on it.
Anna Firth.
Yeah.
Lee Anderson, valued colleague, are you sad to see him go?
Yes, I am sad to see Lee Anderson go, but what he said was unacceptable. It was offensive, and he gave the Prime Minister and the Chief Whip no choice.
Which he's admitted himself.
Which he's admitted himself in his own tweet.
Which shows how stupid he is, doesn't it?
Well, he was offered the opportunity to apologise. He hasn't apologised, and I hope he will reflect on that, because you shouldn't make a comment like that without having the evidence to back it up. But having said that, Lee, nonetheless, I think was trying to reflect a sentiment which is shared by a great number of people who are concerned at seeing marches and protests, week after week, month after month, which are not always peaceful. We know that because there have been 600 arrests, 40 against the Terrorism Act, and I think a line was crossed last week with the projection onto the House of Commons of that anti-Semitic slogan, and that should not happen. And it caused, what has been happening has caused the Speaker to make a cataclysmic error, and he has said that due to threats, due primarily to women, he interfered with the proceedings in the House of Commons, and that should never happen.
But it was worse than that, wasn't it? Because he essentially claimed that Sadiq Khan was being controlled by Islamists.
As I've said, it was wrong what he said. It was offensive. It was, you should not make comments like that without evidence to back them up.
I mean,
those are not the choice. That is not the choice of words I would have used, and that's why he's no longer a member of the parliamentary party.
You've written a fairly trenchant article for the Daily Telegraph, which is headlined, and I appreciate you don't write the headlines, but it's headlined, "Nobody wants to admit the scale of the Islamist threat to our democracy." Now, assuming you think that's a fair summation of the article, what is the Islamist threat to our democracy?
Well, in the last 14 years, we've had two MPs who've actually been murdered. We've had another one, a Labour MP, Stephen Timms, who was stabbed. And I think that they were not all three by Islamists. The Joe Cox was
the only one was actually Sir David Amess, your predecessor.
Well, nonetheless, I represent a seat where my predecessor was murdered by somebody who murdered him because of how he voted in the House of Commons, who was an Islamist. And if you look over the last 10 years or so, we have had a lot now of terrorist attacks. 2017, we've had the stabbing on London Bridge. I mean, we had the murder of PC Keith Palmer outside Parliament. We have had an enormous number now of terrorist incidents where there has been an Islamist extremist involved. So But
there have also been far-right incidents, haven't there?
Absolutely. The problem here is peaceful protests being hijacked by extremists, and that should not be happening. And what happened last week is due to threats, and we really need to know from the Speaker, who are the threats coming from, what are they, and what is going to be done about them.
Quentin Letts.
Well, I'm a journalist, as are you, Ian, and I'm a spectator at these events, and I think we journalists are in the business of trying to get people to say things rather than trying to stop people saying things. And I'm also rather in favour of politicians saying what they think. And if Lee Anderson thinks this, which he presumably did, then I'm, as a journalist, interested to hear that. And I think that the phrase there, the offensive to the British people, if the British people are offended, which they may well be, then let them show their offence at the ballot box. So I'm a sort of live and let live person on the whole. And I would balance what Anderson has said with the sort of chants that we're hearing at some of these marches in London. And a friend of mine has a Jewish daughter and Jewish granddaughters, and they live in Salisbury, of all places. And this daughter of my friend is thinking of emigrating to Israel because she feels so threatened by the chants that are being heard at these marches. I really doubt that Sadiq Khan, who's a tough guy, the mayor of London, he can look after himself. I don't suppose he was really himself personally offended by this. And there's politics going on both sides. The Tories... Please let me finish. I think there is politics being played. But when politicians get involved, they're looking for votes. They're trying to play this. Let them carry out the drama. Let us judge it. And then if we are disgusted by it, or if we agree with it, then we can reflect our feelings at the ballot box.
But the fact that he is being accused of Islamophobia, the Prime Minister refuses to use the word. I mean, I think you underestimate Sadiq Khan's views on this. He was on the Newsagents podcast today talking about it at great length. Do you not think that Islamophobia should be called out?
I'm a little bit more sceptical about politicians.
OK, Siobhain?
I don't think there's any evidence that Sadiq Khan has given the city to his mates. That's a trope. It's suggesting that the people who are Muslims are corrupt, are trying to buy the city, whatever. I mean, I don't know, Quentin, it's about the radicalisation on all sides, isn't it? I mean, there are, the security services are saying they are as worried about right-wing radicalisation as they are...
Well, I think they said they were more worried
religious radicalisation. I would never say that I am Sadiq's best friend, but I was horrified when that was said, because actually I think he has done a great job at trying to hold our city together at really difficult times. And I don't know whether I am watching different demonstrations than other people, but I see on those demonstrations as many... British white people as Asian or Muslim people. I see a combination of people of a religious faith and people of a political view. When Steve Reid, the MP for Croydon North, showed me the demonstration outside his house, most of the people I saw on that video were not people of Muslims. They were kind of the hard left people who used to be on his GC, who were Momentum members and are now no longer in the Labour Party.
So when did that happen outside his house? Because we heard all about the one outside Tobias Ellwood's house, but I have to say that's the first I've heard about Steve Reed.
Yeah, Steve Reed was maybe a month, 6 weeks before that. So, I mean, the idea that the people on the demonstrations are all of a religious view and radicalised is simply not the case. We have a group of people who, for good or ill, feel very strongly about the whole issue and are distressed about quite rightly, what's going on for the Palestinians in Gaza. And combined with that, we have kind of some fairly radical religious and political people. So it's much more complicated than that. And I just think his comments were plainly untrue, that Sadiq has done his best to try and keep this city together.
And they're dangerous. That's the point.
I'll come back to you, Ali, in a minute. I just want to read out this follow-up text question from Mo in Barrow, who says, as a proud British Muslim, I've always appreciated how well we've done as a country in respecting and valuing each other, irrespective of our differences. Today, Conservative MP Paul Scully talked about changing neighbourhoods and about there being no-go areas in London and Birmingham where Muslim people live. How is this language anything but inflammatory? I've never voted before, and we have a good MP here in Barrow and Furness. I've decided to vote Labour, not because I believe in them or their policies, but mainly because the government is creating divisions in this country and needlessly inflaming tensions between communities. The government should lower the rhetoric.
Yeah, look, I think it's dangerous, and I could not disagree more about this being politics and Sadiq Khan not being offended. I don't know if you've ever gone around London with Sadiq, but he has to walk around with serious security. And that is because there are constant threats on his life, credible threats on his life, and this isn't a game. When Lee Anderson says these things, when Boris Johnson historically has said these things, when Zach Goldsmith ran that disgusting campaign for London Mayor, what that results in is people like myself, Muslims who are in the public space, who do politics, we fear for our lives because people have been killed. I was in Finsbury Park the morning after a Ramadan where a man was run over by a van and killed as a result of the Islamophobia in this country. It's not a game. It's not just politicians saying things and you know, just let them say whatever they think. Obviously, everybody's free to say what they think, but there are consequences to our words. And the consequences are the safety of 4 million Muslims in this country